All right, we're moving on now. We're going to talk about some different dense connective tissue types in the body. So as we said earlier, dense means lots of fibers. So in the extracellular matrix, in our extracellular matrix, that's what we mean by a dense connective tissues. Collagen fibers, lots and lots and lots of collagen fibers, especially in these tissues. Also, you'll have some elastic and reticular fibers in there as well, but mainly lots and lots and lots of collagen. All right, this also means in these dense connective tissues, you don't have as much ground substance. You don't have as much space in there for other types of things. Okay, so our dense connective tissues, there are two types. First one we're going to talk about, dense regular. So dense regular connective. So we already said that dense means there are lots of protein fibers in there. Regular means that those fibers tend to be arranged in parallel. So this is an image of an actual dense regular connective tissue if you were looking at it under the microscope. And all the pink swirly wavy stuff you see there, those collagen fibers take up this pink dye so they appear pink on the image. Those are collagen fibers. And then where you're seeing in purple, like right there and right there, that's the nucleus. Each of those is the nucleus of a fibroblast. All right, so in these tissues, you've got to have fibroblasts because fibroblasts make all that collagen. They're the cells that manufacture all that stuff, and then they secrete it into the extracellular matrix that surrounds them. And you can't see the borders of the cell because the borders of these cells actually blend in with the collagen fibers because the cytoplasm of those cells actually also looks pink like the fibers do. All right, so places in the body, where would you have these? You have these, think about dense regular connective tissues, tendons and ligaments. Those are the two main places. There's another area in aponeurosis that we'll talk about when we cover the muscular system in Unit 4. But tendons, what they do is they attach your muscles to bones, and ligaments attach bones to each other. They're composed of dense regular connective tissue. And all right, so we've already said, what did we say, collagen? What was the function? You have tons of collagen fibers in these tissues. And collagen actually has a white appearance, so these tissues actually look white in reality if you take a look at them. And we said, remember we said collagen fibers were good for? Tensile strength, they resist pulling. So if you think about where a muscle is attached to a bone, that muscle pulls on the bone to cause a movement at the joint. So the muscle is, like they're showing you over here in this diagram, here's a muscle, and here you've got this tendon where it's attached to the bone. So that tendon has to be able to resist lots and lots of pulling, lots of stress, lots of strain. And so that's why this type of tissue, remember how we said form follows function in anatomy and physiology? The function here is we need to be able to resist a lot of stress, so the form is going to be we're built from a dense, regular connective tissue. So these are very tough tissues. They resist a lot of pulling. Now notice that tissue is so full of collagen, there is no room for things like capillaries. There's no passageway for capillaries to go through there, and which means you don't have a good blood supply. These tissues have a poor blood supply. That means that all these little fibroblasts in here, they're dependent on things like O2, oxygen gas, and nutrients like glucose, for example. Those have to diffuse in from other surrounding tissues. And so sometimes those things have a long distance to travel by diffusion before they can get to those cells. Now those things, O2 and glucose, are small enough. Those are super, super tiny, so they can squeeze around all those collagen fibers, but you can't have something big like a blood vessel passing through there. If you've ever known anybody, or maybe you have ever sprained an ankle, you've torn a tendon or a ligament at some point, it takes forever to heal. That's because of the poor blood supply. So keep in mind, you got to start thinking now about blood supply, healing, growth, active metabolism. If you kind of plant that in your head now, it helps out with critical thinking as you move through Biology 201 and 202 and you're trying to figure out why certain bodily processes happen. A lot of times you trace these things back to blood supply and getting oxygen and nutrients to places and removing wastes. It's a concept that comes up over and over again. All right, so then our other type of dense connective tissue is called dense irregular connective tissue. So with dense regular, we said the collagen fibers in there, those protein fibers, are arranged in parallel, very orderly. In irregular, dense irregular, you still have lots and lots of fibers, but those fibers are not in parallel. They run in all different directions. Lots of protein fibers moving in all different directions. All right, so this is actually an image from the dermis of your skin. That is a skin layer that's underneath the surface. Surface layer of the skin is called the epidermis. You've probably heard of that before. You go just below there and you're in the dermis part of the skin, which is actually a little thicker, and that is built from dense, irregular connective tissue. So if we look at our picture here, those dark purple spots, those are the nuclei of fibroblasts in the tissue, and then all our pink swirly stuff you see on here, which takes up most of the space between those cells. All that swirly stuff looks kind of choppy and swirly. Those are mostly collagen fibers, so there's lots of them in there, but they run in all different directions. Now, in contrast to your dense regular connective tissues, you can have a better blood supply. You do have some room for blood vessels to pass through here. So they're not like the dense regular connective tissues where you have that super poor blood supply. You find these tissues in places where you need to be able to withstand tension in many different directions. So like in the skin, when we were talking about before, if you pull on your skin, you cannot just rip off a chunk of skin very easily, and that's because in the dermis of your skin, underneath the surface, you've got all these tons and tons of collagen fibers running in all different directions, so that helps resist pulling in multiple different directions. In a tendon or a ligament where you have dense regular, that tends to resist pulling just in one direction, and that's all you need with those particular structures. And you do have other kinds of fibers in there as well. It's not just collagen. You've got elastic fibers in there too, because your skin is supposed to be elastic and rebound back into place when you pull on it. You also have dense irregular tissues in the walls of your digestive organs, underneath that those inside linings, around some of the coverings. Fibrous capsules are coverings that you have around some of your organs, and you also have coverings around your joints that we'll learn about when we cover the skeletal system that are composed of this type of tissue as well. All right, one more type of dense connective tissue. There's a third one here. Elastic dense connective tissue. So guess what type of fiber you're going to have a whole bunch of in this type of connective tissue? Elastic fibers. All right, so if we use our critical thinking here, dense, lots of elastic fibers in this tissue, where are you going to have something like this? You're going to have this type of tissue in locations where you have things that get stretched and they need to rebound back into place pretty frequently. So you have elastic, dense connective tissue in places like the walls of your large arteries, like they're showing you here, the aorta, right in there. That's the aorta coming out of the heart. Think about it. Throughout your whole lifetime, the heart pumps blood up into the aorta. The walls of the aorta expand, and as that blood moves forward in between heartbeats, the walls of the aorta have to bounce back into place. and that has to continue throughout your entire lifetime. Otherwise, your aorta would quit functioning properly. So you'll have elastic type tissues in body locations where you need a lot of rebound, and the book is providing you with some additional examples of those as well. All right, so those were your dense types of connective tissues, and then lecture number 8, we'll finally finish up connective tissues. We're going to talk about cartilages, which are another special type of connective tissues, and then we'll discuss a little bit about bones and blood, which are also special types of connective tissue as well.